Learn English through stories of 7. Adapted and modified by Kulwant Singh Sandhu. Contents: 1. The Three Little Pigs. 2. Grammar page, some rules. 1. The Three Little Pigs. Once there was a pig who lived with her 3 children on a large, comfortable, old-fashioned farmyard. Her own pigsty was also large and comfortable apart from when it was a rainy season. She was a very caring and loving mother like any other good mum. The names of her little ones were Brownie the eldest, Whitey the second one, and the youngest, who was very wise and good-looking, was called Blackie. All the young ones were different in their mindset, habits and manners. Now Brownie was a very dirty little pig, and I am sorry to say he spent most of his time rolling and wallowing about in the mud. He was never as happy as on a wet day when the mud in the farmyard got soft, thick and clay. Then he would sneak away from his mother's side, and finding the muddiest place in the yard, would roll about in it and thoroughly enjoy himself. His mother often found fault with him for this and would shake her head sadly and say, "Ah, Brownie, someday you will be sorry that you did not obey your old mother." But no words of advice or warning could cure Brownie of his bad habits. Whitey was quite a clever little pig, but she was greedy, a real greedy pig. She was always thinking of her food, and looking forward to her dinner, and when the farm girl was seen carrying the buckets across the yard, she would rise on her hind legs and dance and jump playfully. As soon as the food was poured into the trough, she jostled Blackie and Brownie out of the way in her eagerness to get the best and biggest bits for herself. Her mother often scolded her for her selfishness and told her that someday she would suffer for being so greedy and selfish. Her mom would often say to her, "Greed is a curse." Blackie was a good, nice little pig, neither dirty nor greedy. He had nice dainty ways, for a pig, and his skin was always as smooth and shining as black satin. He was much cleverer than Brownie and Whitey, and his mother's heart used to swell with pride when she heard the farmers' friends say to each other that someday the little black fellow would be a prize pig. Time went on. The farmer passed away. He was a very generous man. He was also a fox hunter, so the pigs were always protected from the foxes. Luckily, he left a lot of wealth for the mother pig. He also gave her 3 acres of land so all the kid pigs could build their homes, get married and settle. Now the time came when the mother pig felt old and feeble and near her end. One day she called the 3 little pigs around her and said, "My children, I feel that I am growing old and weak, and that I shall not live long. Before I die, I should like to build a house for each of you, as this dear old sty in which we have lived so happily will be given to a new family of pigs, and you will have to move out. Now, Brownie, what sort of a house would you like to have?" "A house of mud," replied Brownie, looking longingly at a wet puddle in the corner of the yard. "And you, Whitey?" said the mother pig in rather a sad voice, for she was disappointed that Brownie had made so foolish a choice. "A house of cabbage," answered Whitey, with a mouth full, and scarcely raising her snout out of the trough in which she was grubbing for some potato and carrots. "Foolish, foolish child," said the mother pig, looking quite distressed. "And you, Blackie," turning to her youngest son, "what sort of a house shall I order for you?" "A house of brick, please, mother, as it will be warm in winter and cool in summer, and safe all year around. You needn't install any central heating or air con, no need to have any guard either." "That is a sensible little pig," replied his mother, looking fondly at him. "I can see that the 3 houses are getting ready at once, and now, one last piece of advice. You have heard me talk of our old enemy the fox. We were safe when the farmer was alive, as his big dogs would not let come any fox near the farmyard. He was also a fox hunter. Now, I am worried. When the fox hears that I am dead, he will try to get hold of you, to carry you off to his den. He is very sly, and will no doubt disguise himself, and pretend to be a friend, but you must promise me not to let him enter your houses on any pretext whatever." And the little pigs readily promised, for they had always feared the fox, of whom they had heard many terrible tales. A short time afterwards the old pig died, and the little pigs went to live in their own houses. Brownie was quite delighted with his soft mud walls and with the clay floor, which soon looked like nothing but a massive pool of mud. But that was what Brownie enjoyed, and he was as happy as larks, rolling about all day and making himself in such a mess. One day, as he was lying half asleep in the mud, he heard a soft knock at his door, and a gentle voice said, "May I come in, Master Brownie? I want to see your beautiful new house." "Who are you?" said Brownie, starting up in great fright. Even though the voice sounded gentle, he felt sure it was a feigned voice, and he feared it was the fox. "I am a friend come to call on you," answered the voice. "No, no," replied Brownie, "I don't believe you are a friend. You are the wicked fox, against whom our mother warned us. I won't let you in." "Oh, is that the way you answer your guests?" said the fox, speaking very roughly in his natural voice. "We shall soon see who is the master here," and with his paws, he set to work and scraped a large hole in the soft mud walls. A moment later he had jumped through it, and catching Brownie by the neck, flung him on his shoulders and trotted off with him to his den. The next day, as Whitey was munching a few leaves of cabbage out of the corner of her house, the fox stole up to her door, determined to carry her off to join her brother in his den. He began speaking to her in the same feigned gentle voice in which he had spoken to Brownie, but it frightened her very much when he said, "I am a friend come to visit you, and to have some of your good cabbage for my dinner." "Please don't touch it," cried Whitey in great distress. "The cabbages are the walls of my house, and if you eat them you will make a hole, and the wind and rain will come in and give me a cold. Do go away. I am sure you are not a friend, but our wicked enemy the fox." And poor Whitey began to whine and to whimper, and to wish that she had not been such a greedy little pig, and had chosen a more solid material than cabbages for her house. But it was too late now, and in another minute the fox had eaten his way through the cabbage walls, and had caught the trembling, shivering Whitey, and carried her off to his den. The next day, the fox started off to Black's house, because he had decided to get the 3 little pigs together in his den, then kill them, and invite all his friends to a feast. But when he reached the brick house, he found that the door was bolted and barred, so in his sly manner, he began, "Do let me in, dear Blackie. I have brought you a present of some eggs that I picked up in a farmyard on my way here." "No, no, Mr. Fox," replied Blackie, "I am not going to open my door to you. I know your cunning ways. You have carried off poor Brownie and Whitey, but you are not going to get me." At this, the fox was so angry that he dashed with all his force against the wall, and tried to knock it down. But it was too strong and well built, and though the fox scraped and tore at the bricks with his paws he only hurt himself, and at last he had to give it up, and limp away with his 4 paws all bleeding and sore. "Never mind," he cried angrily as he went off, "I'll catch you another day, see if I don't, and won't I grind your bones to powder when I have got you in my den," and he snarled fiercely and showed his teeth. The next day Blackie had to go into the neighboring town to do some marketing, and to buy a big kettle. As he was walking home with it slung over his shoulder, he heard the sound of steps stealthily creeping after him. For a moment his heart stood still with fear, and then a happy thought came to him. He had just reached the top of a hill, and could see his own little house nestling at the foot of it among the trees. In a moment he had snatched the lid off the kettle and had jumped in himself. Coiling himself round, he lay quite snug in the bottom of the kettle, while with his foreleg he managed to put the lid on so that he was entirely hidden. With a little kick from the inside, he started the kettle off, and down the hill it rolled full tilt, and when the fox came up, all that he saw was a large black kettle spinning over the ground at a great pace. Very much disappointed, he was just going to turn away when he saw the kettle stop close to the little brick house, and a moment later Blackie jumped out of it and escaped with the kettle into the house, when he barred and bolted the door, and put the shutter up over the window. "Oh," exclaimed the fox to himself, "you think you will escape me that way, do you? We shall soon see about that, my friend," and very quietly and stealthily he prowled round the house looking for some way to climb onto the roof. In the meantime Blackie had filled the kettle with water, and having put it on the fire, sat down quietly waiting for it to boil. Just as the kettle was beginning to sing, and steam to come out of the spout, he heard a sound like a soft, muffled step, patter, patter, patter overhead, and the next moment the fox's head and forepaws were seen coming down the chimney. But Blackie very wisely had not put the lid on the kettle, and with a yelp of pain, the fox fell into the boiling water, and before he could escape, Blackie had put the lid on, and the fox was scalded to death. Now, Blackie breathed a great sigh of relief after knowing that their deadly enemy was no longer alive. He poured cold water into the kettle and the kettle cooled down. He put the carcass of the fox into a big sack and tied it with a string. He didn't want to leave the dead body in his house while he would go to the den to fetch his brother and sister. So he put the sack on his shoulder, locked the house, and went to the den. As he approached the den, he heard piteous grunts and squeals from his poor little brother and sister. They had stayed there in constant terror. But when they saw Blackie appear at the entrance to the den, their joy knew no bounds. He threw the sack on the floor and quickly found a sharp stone and cut the cords by which they were tied to a pole in the ground. They buried the sack in the ground and put some soil on it. Then they said their happy farewell to the grave of the fox and left for Black's house. So they reached the house and discussed their achievements and what more to be done. Brownie decided to be clean from then on, and Whitey decided to cease her greed. Blackie suggested growing their own vegetables and eating a healthy diet. Vocabulary. 1. Mindset, mentality, a set of attitudes or fixed ideas that somebody has and that are often difficult to change. 2. Wallow, to lie and roll about in water or mud, to keep cool or for pleasure. 3. Trough, a long, narrow, open container for animals to eat or drink from. 4. Jostle, to knock or push roughly against someone in order to move past them. 5. Dainty, graceful or delicate. 6. Feeble, very weak and without energy, strength, or power. 7. Sty, a pigsty or pig pen, a place where pigs are kept. 8. Grubbing, searching. 9. Sly, crafty. 10. Pretext, a false reason that you give for doing something. 11. As happy as larks, very happy. 12. Feign, to pretend. 13. Steal, stole, up, to move secretly and quietly so that others do not notice you. 14. Whine and whimper, moan and cry. 2. Grammar page.